So I'm going to talk about how I've used this screen capture technology in a blended classroom. And I teach economics at Seattle Pacific University. So a blended classroom, just real quick in case you're unfamiliar with this sort of classroom setup, is where you replace a portion of the face-to-face classroom with online classwork, homework, collaboration. So it's different than a web-enhanced course, such as the one Bain was talking about. You're actually replacing some of that in-class time with required online presence. So it can be collaboration, learning, assignments, but it's required rather than a supplement that they can optionally use. And the sort of consensus in the literature, I guess you could say, is that at least 30% is online. Otherwise, you're more of looking at a web enhancement. So why do this kind of classroom? There's a couple big reasons. I have found my students are incredibly busy, and this offers them extra flexibility in their schedule. Instead of the structure of maybe showing up for class 3 times a week at a certain time, they have at least one class a week, let's say, where they can do their work online and they complete their required work, but they can do it, after work when they get home at night, or they can do it early in the morning. So they have more flexibility as they have these increasingly busy schedules. It engages a wider variety of learning styles instead of the traditional lecture, which is very visual and audio based. There's learning by doing options, and there's different ways to combine those different learning styles. So it engages a wider variety of learning styles than a traditional lecture. And also it creates efficiency for the professor as well. There's an initial investment to teaching a course in this format, in the setup and the design of it. But once you're past that initial investment, using some of these technologies like Camtasia Relay, the online screen capture, can be reused quarter after quarter rather than reproducing a live lecture every quarter. So it does have some efficiency gains as well. So the goals for using Camtasia in my blended classroom, I had 3. The first was to set clear standards for classroom preparation. So I could actually send them lectures ahead of time and assignments before the quarter started that were not graded, but they could look through, and I said, you're expected to know this material coming into the class. So if you're not up to speed, if it's been 5 years since you took the prerequisite for this class, you should probably review these because you're going to be expected to know this level of material when you enter this class. The second is to communicate information in a medium that students relate to and they understand. They watch videos all the time, and as Bain's student comments probably suggested, they actually like having access to videos to rewatch lectures rather than going through their notes. They respond to videos very well. It's a very big part of their culture and how they communicate and interact. And the third is efficiency. I mentioned efficiency for the professor, but also for the student. They can jump ahead in the lecture if they want to. If they only need the last 5 minutes, they can jump around. They can watch it multiple times if they need to, but it saves the time of the other student, where if we're all in a classroom together and I ask a question, everyone else has to watch the professor go through that question again, even if they may already understand it. So it gives a little bit more control of the student's time in that way as well. So the courses that I have used Camtasia Relay for in a blended format are a Principles of Macroeconomics course and also an Intermediate Macroeconomics course. So both sort of that intro level and then the upper division, I've used this technology in both classrooms. And I used it, initially my intended tools were lecturing, so lecture capture, much the way that Bain talked about, and lecture supplement also, which has been previously mentioned. I quickly added on layers of how I could use this tool, first to improve student efficiency or their time use through practice problems, where they could again watch them as many times or as few times as they needed in order to get the information, and quiz review. So one thing that gets cut out quickly when you're doing a blended course is that extra review time that you would maybe spend a class time after a midterm or after a quiz going over each question individually. And some students find that really valuable, and some students intentionally skip that class, and that's kind of how it goes. So this is one way where I can take that classroom, and that can be an online space where I go through all the questions, and if I only missed 2 questions on the quiz, I can skip forward to those questions that I missed, and I can use my time more efficiently that way as a student. Where if I got 100%, I don't have to sit through the review. I can say, oh look, I got all these questions right, my understanding is up to par, I'm going to move on to the new material. Instructor efficiency is another advantage to using this tool, and I used it to give them instructions, which sounds a little bit silly until you get 10 emails asking, how do I open this document on Blackboard? Or, I thought that you said to submit this by email and I'm confused and I don't understand where I'm supposed to put it in Blackboard. That's the learning, what do you call that? The learning what?
Management system.
Learning management system. So obviously that's his job to know that kind of thing. But that's the learning management system we use. And so students sometimes get confused about which tab they're supposed to be under, so I can do a quick example. This is how you submit a homework assignment. This is how you take a quiz. This is how you start a video in Blackboard. And I can send that out to them through email if they're having trouble with Blackboard, and I can also post it on Blackboard for later reference. Assignment description. No matter how many times or how many pages I write of an assignment, they still want to hear me say it. They want to hear me talk them through it. And so rather than doing that over multiple phone calls or office visits or spending valuable class time when I'm giving up 30% of my face-to-face time, I can do a quick little screen capture going through the steps of the assignment and what I expect from them, and they like to hear it in my voice. So that saves me a lot of time to just do it once and have that video. And then the pre-course tutorial that I mentioned, where I can set the learning standard coming into the course and say you're expected to know these 10 concepts from macroeconomics if you're going to come into intermediate macro. So if they're rusty, go back to your intro book and review it, because we're going to start right here when we get to day 1. So that saves that review time, that review class period or class week, where I'm catching the students up on their knowledge. So we've seen examples of the practice problems. The quiz review is very similar. It's, walking through the problems just specific to their quiz problems. So I'm going to show you an example of me giving instructions through the Camtasia Relay technology. Wait, what did I do wrong? Oh no, I'm good.
You're there.
So somewhere in there's good.
Once you create this form, you can then go inside the forum and create discussion threads. This is where you'll actually want to have your discussion.
So you just do kind of a real-time, this is what it would look like if you're doing it as a student. You're typing in.
You have an amazing point about the reading, which you type here.
There you go.
You submit your thoughts.
And you get the general idea. So it'll actually video me, capture me going through, posting a thread, and in this particular instruction I go ahead and reply to the thread as well so they know the full process. And there they have the instructions, and they can go back over them if they forget from week to week. They only had to submit discussions once a week, and they did it last week, and they already forgot how to do it. So they can go back to it, and they can look at the instructions again, and it saves a lot of time as far as sending out emailed instructions. Even if you have like a pre-typed email that you just forward, it's still that time over and over versus them just having that video at their fingertips. And they don't have to wait for it either. So this is a conversation that actually took place in my office, 2 students and a professor, during office hours before a class, that they had a quiz in that class, in a blended classroom. So a student comes into my office and says, I need help. I don't get it. I mean, most instructors have heard that before. So I say, sure, of course. What are you having trouble with? Where should we start helping you? I just don't get it. I don't get any of it. I don't know. It's a very familiar scenario to professors. Another student who happens to be in my office, did you watch the video? Not really. Well, I meant to. I was, whatever, excuses. Here, let me show you how to do the problem. So the student who watched the video actually was chastising the student who took the video for granted and saying, hey, it was really helpful, and I know how to do this. Let me show you, so that she can actually answer a harder question because we have a quiz on this in 30 minutes. So don't waste her time, the student's saying, don't waste her time on an easy question that she already put in the video. Let's move on to more difficult things. So that was really reinforcing to me my goal of moving them to that next level of learning by getting those basics in the screen capture. And then just some other student responses. I love having the solution videos, so referring to the quizzes and the problems. I watched it like 12 times and now I get it. So the student that needed to go over it repeatedly was able to, but the student that didn't need to didn't have to spend their time going over it repetitively. So it helps the students who are at different learning levels use their time to their best advantage. It's great when studying for the test. I can go back over it as many times as I want. I can pause it along the way and practice the problems. So they actually were mid-lecture, they would pause it and then go work on their problem that was relevant, and then they'd go back and continue. And I didn't really use it. I prefer to read the book. I felt like I had to watch them, so the student felt guilty if they didn't watch it. So they watched it, but they didn't find it very useful. So it's not, it helps some students more than others, but in general, it lets them be in control of that use of their time. So I just wanted to close really quickly with some tips and tricks that I've come to over using this technology, and I think Bain would probably agree with them as well. Funny pauses. Literally, when I first started doing this, if I was doing a problem, I would say, okay, now do this. And I would leave a minute of recording for them to do it. And they said, Professor Mason, we thought you got up and went to the bathroom or something. Can you just, why did you do that? And I was like, so you can work on the problem. Like, we can pause it. I was like, oh, okay, right. So you can literally just record straight through and let them be in control of when it stops and goes. You don't have to, I was trying to, I don't know. It was new technology. You don't have to be a genius to use this technology, clearly. So this is just a little tip. You don't have to leave little pauses for them. They'll figure it out. Imperfection is actually kind of a good thing, and I think David and Bain have both alluded to this, but if you say or you have a colloquialism or an accent or something, the students feel like they're relating to you. They think it's funny, and they'll tell you, oh, it was so funny when you choked on your water in the middle of that video or whatever, and I didn't have time to record it. And so they think it's funny and endearing, and I'm sure they probably also make fun of me for it, but it makes it personal, so it really does give it that sort of relational. I'm sure it's even more of an advantage in a fully online class. It's a person. It's not a robot reading a script. I'm talking to them, and then I coughed, and, it was badly timed, and they thought it was funny. So you don't have to record. I usually maybe record twice at the most if something really horrible goes wrong, because you can't clip in the middle. But in general, the imperfections kind of make them a little bit better. Am I over?
We're close. Do you want to pass those?
Well, efficiency, someone already mentioned kind of the 20-minute cutoff. And this is one great advantage that I do want to mention before I stop, and then I'll just stop here, is the anonymity. So that student that needed to go over that question 12 times, they didn't have to raise their hand and look stupid in class when everybody else got it. Not that we want them to feel stupid, but there's always that pressure of, am I the only person that has this question? And I've had multiple students say that they really like that they could go over it as many times as they wanted without feeling like they're holding the other students back. So that is a real advantage of particularly using it for problems and quiz solutions. And even the lectures, really. They can just go back and review as many times as they want. So I will skip my limitations, and this is, if you have any questions, I think we'd all be happy to field questions, so thank you.